Hey brothers and sisters, Matt Thatton here. So the costume chamber is live again for October. So I've put together a couple videos, or a few videos I should say. One is going to be on the rare heroes that are available and what to do with the costumes or the base versions. And then I have a second video that's on the epic heroes and a third video just specifically on the legendary. So for this rare video, I'm going to take a few minutes here just to go over some quick things about the costume chamber in general, but then on the epic and the legendary videos I'm going to skip over this. So for the again, this video is going to just focus on the 3-star or the rare heroes that are available in the costume chamber. For the costume chamber this October, the two featured heroes are Liana and Vivica, which are excellent legendary heroes if you can get those costumes. The chance to summon one of these is about 1.3%, so at least it's better than the 1% of the ninjas. To summon out of the costume chamber, you're going to need either 5 costume keys, which you might want to check your inventory. You might have some keys laying around from some wanted missions or Alliance war chests that you did before. But you can also do the costume quest that's available on the map to try and get some keys there. Or if you want to make a purchase, you can buy some gems and use 300 gems for each individual summon, or if you want to do a 10 pull, that would be 3,000 gems. And then right now there's a deal that for approximately like $10 US, you can get 6 pulls if you buy 3 of these wardrobe wonders that are available, because each 300 gem is 1 summon and then the 5 keys is another, so you can get 6 total here. But the costume chamber for me is the event that I always recommend for cheap to play or kind of low level players that don't have a really good collection of heroes yet. And there's 3 main reasons for that. The costume chamber will provide a base version and the costume version of the hero, so you're essentially getting like 2 different types of heroes to play with for the price of 1. For some costumes, they can take an average hero and improve them to a top tier hero worthy of emblems, which is essentially like the great example of that is Ryguard. It takes a 4-star and he's essentially like a small 5-star because of his costume. And then the third thing to keep in mind with the costume chamber is when you're dealing with these heroes and their costumes, that you can get that costume bonus, which is really great on both versions of the hero. Just as a reminder, the costume bonus is adding 5% attack, 5% defense, 10% health, and 5% mana. These are permanent stat boosts, and they do apply to both the base version and the costume version of the hero. So for this video, there are 15 rare heroes that we're going to go through quickly. I'm going to give some upgrade and downgrade opinions as far as which costume to use or which base version to use. But I'm basing this on 3 main categories. One is the special skill changes, which are very important, the hero class changes, which are very important, and then the base stat changes are important, but they're not as important as the other 2. And just a reminder, for the costume chamber, you have about a 71% chance of summoning a rare hero. So you're definitely, if you do some summons, you're going to get some of these heroes. So for the first hero, Azur, she's going from a barbarian to a ranger. She's losing 22 attack, but she's gaining 20 defense and 13 health. She's losing 110% damage to a single target and 10% mana reduction on that single target. But at the same time, she's gaining 170% damage to nearby enemies, and she's gaining a 15% mana reduction of nearby enemies. So Azur is losing the chance for a bleed dot from her barbarian class, but she's gaining the chance to bypass defensive buffs and counterattacks through the ranger class. She's moving from a single target sniper to a strong multi-target attacker and mana reducer. So I can see her in her base version being a strong wing, but in her costume version, she could be a wing or a pretty good flank. So I'm going to recommend definitely to use the costume version of Azur over the base version. For Hawkmoon, she's moving from a cleric to a sorcerer. She's losing 5 attack, but she's gaining 32 defense and 78 health. She's losing her 32% health for all ability, but she's replacing that with a 459 HP regen for all over 3 turns. And she's also getting a plus 30% attack over 3 turns for all allies, which is excellent. Hawkmoon's losing her chance to resist negative mana and special skill prevention, but she's gaining the chance to reduce mana generation of the enemy. Her attack up is essentially turning Hawkmoon into a 3-star Bolt Tusk, so definitely recommend using the costume version of Hawkmoon over the base. For Bane, he's moving from a monk to a ranger. He's gaining 37 attack and 32 defense and 78 health. He's losing 20% damage to a single target, but he's gaining an additional 5% accuracy down to the single target for 4 turns. So he's also losing his chance to resist status ailments, but he's gaining the chance to bypass defensive buffs and counterattacks. His increase in attack stack is definitely overriding the percent decrease in his target attack damage, so strongly recommend using the costume version of Bane over his base. For Brienne, she's moving from a druid to a cleric. She's losing 2 attack and 2 defense, but she's gaining plus 10 health. She's losing her 45% attack for all allies and 20% increase each time they're hit for 5 turns, but she's gaining a minus 41% defense of all enemies and 4% decrease each time they are hit for 4 turns. So Brienne's losing her chance for a Thorn minion, but she's gaining resist against negative mana effects and special skill prevention, and her defense down is way better than her attack up, so I'm going to recommend the costume version of Brienne over the base version. For Friar Tuck, he's moving from a monk to a druid. He's losing 7 attack and 4 defense, but he's gaining 30 health. He's losing his 37% health for caster and nearby allies, but he's gaining a 22% health for all allies. And then he's also gaining a plus 24% mana generation for all allies for 3 turns. He's losing his chance to resist status ailments, but he's gaining a chance for a Thorn minion, which isn't great, but it's something. And he can now heal and apply increased mana generation to all allies. So I'm going to say it's a strong recommendation to use the costume version of Friar Tuck over his base. For Carver, he's moving from a rogue to a fighter. He's gaining 18 attack, but he's losing 18 defense and 10 health. He's losing his 16% of mana reduction of all enemies, but he's gaining minus 24% mana generation of all enemies for 3 turns. Carver is losing his chance to dodge incoming offensive skills from his rogue class, but he's gaining a chance to revive from the fighter class. His improved mana reduction on the enemy team is a significant upgrade, and he now hits even harder than he did before, so it's easy to recommend his costume on Carver over the base version. For Belith, she's moving from a druid to a wizard. She's losing 9 attack and 12 defense, but she's gaining 47% health, or 47 health. She's losing 32% health recovery for all allies, but she's gaining a 459 HP regeneration for all allies over 3 turns. She's losing her dispel buffs from all enemies, but she's gaining all allies gain immunity to buff dispels for 3 turns. She's losing her chance of the Thorn minion, but she's gaining a chance to deal plus 15% extra damage per each enemy active buff. Unfortunately, this serves little purpose for a non-attacking healer, so I'm going to recommend using the base version of Belith and staying away from her costume. For Ishtak, he's going from a ranger to a monk. He's gaining plus 2 attack and 88 health, but he's losing 46 defense. Overall, he's losing 75% damage to a single target, but he's adding a minus 44% defense to the target and nearby enemies for 4 turns. He's losing his chance to bypass defensive buffs and counterattack, but he's gaining a chance to resist status ailments. And then the loss of attack power on Ishtak is definitely worth the gain of defense down. So I would say use the costume version of Ishtak over his base. For Baradin, he's going from a ranger to a barbarian. He's losing 36 attack, but he's gaining 29 defense and 31 health. He's losing 34% attack of a single target for 6 turns, but he's applying a 34% defense down on that target for 6 turns. He's losing his chance to bypass defensive buffs and counterattacks, but he's gaining a chance to apply a bleed dot, and then his defense down is much better than attack down. So I would say use the costume version of Baradin over his base version. For Gunnar, he's going from a paladin to a druid. He's gaining 9 attack and 8 health, but he's losing 15 defense. All allies sharing received damage for 5 turns is going away, and it also negative 63 defense for all allies for 5 turns is going away because he's not putting that buff on your allies. He's gaining all enemies sharing received damage with each other for 5 turns, which I'm not really a fan of. And he's gaining all enemies are getting minus 44% defense for 5 turns, which is good. But with Gunnar, he's losing his chance to gain that plus 25% defense for 2 turns from the Paladin. And he's gaining a chance for a Thorn minion. The loss of the defense and shared damage for all allies is a huge hit to his value as a tank. So I'm going to say for Gunnar, use the base version and stay away from the costume. For Carol, he's going from a barbarian to a rogue. He's gaining 19 attack, but he's losing 17 defense and 13 health. He's losing 20% damage to a single target, but he's gaining plus 60 burn damage to the target and nearby enemies over 3 turns. With losing the barbarian class, he's losing his bleed dot, but he's gaining that guaranteed burn damage dot in its place. And with his low defense, the addition of a chance to dodge direct damage through the rogue class is very valuable for Carol. So I'm going to say use the costume version of Carol and stay away from the base version. For Prissa, she's going from a paladin to a fighter. She's losing 18 attack and 21 defense, but she's gaining 93 health. She's losing 30% damage to a single target, and she's gaining minor damage to nearby enemies, but she's losing 20% of her healing of her damage dealt, which is a big hit. She's losing a chance for plus 25% defense over 2 turns from the Paladin class, but she's gaining a chance to revive from the Fighter class. The loss of attack and defense and self-healing, though, is really too much for Prissa to handle, so I'm going to recommend using the base version of her and staying away from the costume. For Tyrum, he's going from a Paladin to a Rogue. He's gaining 9 attack and 3 defense, but he's losing 33 health. He's losing his Dispel buffs from all enemies, but he's gaining a cleansing status ailments from all allies. He's losing his chance for 25% defense, but he's gaining a chance to dodge direct damage from offensive skills. And his loss of dispelling buffs to gain status ailment cleansing is just not worth it. So I'm going to recommend using the base version of Tyrum and staying away from the costume. For Renfeld, he's moving from a fighter to a cleric. He's losing 84 attack, but he's gaining 38 defense and 134 health. He's losing his 20% damage to the target, and he's also losing a 50% of the damage dealt coming back as healing to himself. But he's gaining a mana steal of the target and nearby enemies over 4 turns, which is essentially shutting down their mana generation and stealing it for him so he can attack again. He's losing his chance to revive from the fighter class, but he's gaining the chance to resist negative mana effects and special skill prevention. And then his mana generation lockdown again of 3 targets is definitely worth it when compared to the slight loss of attack power that he's getting. So I'm going to recommend using the costume version of Renfeld and staying away from his base version. For Balthazar, he's going from a wizard to a sorcerer. He's gaining 15 attack and losing 17 defense, and there's no effect on his health. He's losing 20% damage to a single target, but he's gaining 60 poison damage over 3 turns to that target. He's losing his chance to deal an extra 15% extra damage per each active buff on the enemy from the wizard class. And then for the sorcerer class, he's gaining a chance to drop the mana generation of the enemy target by 50%. But overall, I would say staying with the base version of Balthazar is better than going with the costume version, so that's my recommendation. So we're going to do a 10 pull from the costume chamber, but first I just want to say a quick reminder. The other 2 videos, one is called the Costume Chamber Epic Guide, and that's going to cover your 12 epic costumes that are available now. And then the Costume Chamber Legendary Guide has 14 legendary costumes it covers, and those are the 14 currently available legendary costumes from the Costume Chamber. So let's go over to the summoning portal, and I'll do a 10 pull, just see if I can get something other than feeders. I really want some of these 5 stars, but low odds, so let's see. Okay, Azur, have her. Bane, have him. Carver, have him. Renfeld, have him. Hawkmoon, have her. Burden, have him. Ishchak, I have him. All right. Looks like we got a bunch of feeders. Carroll, have him. And Carver, I have him. And Balthazar, I have him as well. Okay, so high odds, 71% that you are going to get a 3-star, so I'm not surprised by this. But good luck in the summoning portal, and I wish you the best of luck if you're trying to get, you know, some epic 4 or legendary 5-star costumes. Please check out the other videos if you have a chance, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.